Everybody, it's time to talk about one of my favoriteest things in the whole wide world, and that is real estate. It's the third Thursday, and we are going to be talking about tax sales, y'all. I'm so excited about tax sales because it's one of the most cost-effective ways to get involved in real estate investing. One of the things that I teach that distinguishes me from other real estate investing teachers is that I don't like you to use debt. And while I'll teach you how debt works, I'll teach you what hard money lenders are and how to effectively use them so you don't get taken for a ride. I'm going to always recommend that you start off in ways that do not cause you to go into debt. Okay. And so this is one of those ways that if you just have sometimes as little as $300-400, but usually it's in like the $2,000 to $3,000 range, you can get started with tax sales. So today we're going to talk about tax sales. And I'm going to make you two promises. First of all, I'm going to teach you skills that you can put into practice tonight. That's right. You can put them into practice tonight, and they can translate into some money in your pocket as early as next week. Now, for actual tax sales, most of the tax sales I'll be participating in don't happen until May or June. So the reason I'm teaching this so soon is because I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to put into place the different things that you need to put into place so that you can not only do the tax sales, but do the tax sales with tax-free profit. Okay, so you can go out and do a tax sale tomorrow and you can make some money, and that's great. However, if you want to do it tax-free, you got to set up a self-directed IRA. And if you don't already have one, that's a little bit of a process. Okay, and so we're not talking about self-directed IRAs today. You can go on my YouTube channel and do a search, and you can find where I do talk about it, and we'll talk about it some other time, or you can join the group coaching and I'll talk more about that. But just know that there are some different things that you need to do, and I actually provide you contact information for somebody who can help you do it. They don't pay me to do that, but they've helped me, so I'm going to help you. All right, so two promises. One, I'm going to teach you stuff you can put in practice tonight, and two, I know that there's going to be some of you who take this information and you run with it. There's going to be others of you who are going to be like, you know what, I've been burned in the past and I do not want to make another mistake before. Maybe you've done everything you could do and you found out that the only people making money off the real estate classes you bought were the people who sold them to you. Well, that's why I'm going to give you the opportunity to learn more, either in a learning mode or in an earn while you learn kind of mode. All right, so that's what we're going to be doing at the end of the class today. So let me ask you this question: what would you do with a $5,000 house? Now I'm broadcasting this at a different time than I normally do, so I know I won't have my regulars on. I am going to rebroadcast this. Whenever you're watching, please go ahead and drop in the chat, what would you do with a $5,000 house? What would you do if you could acquire a property that is in your town or around the corner or in your county or across the state for $5,000? What would you do with that house? What would you do? What would you do? Well, I'm going to walk you through a process that lets you actually get started for even less than that, but often about $5,000 to $10,000 if you want to buy the property outright, or even less than that if you want to take out a tax sale, tax lien on the property. Okay, so let me overview the process. The reason tax sales work is because when people don't pay their property tax, the county, the parish, whatever jurisdiction you're in, sometimes the city still needs to pay cops and schools and whatnot. So what they do is they sell off the tax to that property. The investor, like me and you, pays the tax. Sometimes we pay more than the tax, however the sale goes. The owner of that property gets the opportunity in most markets to redeem the property. If the owner doesn't redeem, then the investor can take steps to begin taking ownership of that property. That's the general process. So the jurisdictions, they still get to pay everybody. The homeowner gets a chance to get caught back up. And if they do get caught back up, you get money in your pocket. And if they don't get caught back up, you get a property. Sounds like a win-win to me. Sounds like a win-win to me. So there's three general types of tax sales that I'm going to talk about. Most states are going to be either tax lien, where you buy a lien against the property, or they're going to be tax deed, where you're actually buying the property. Okay. In either case, if the owner doesn't redeem, you can take the steps to redeem the property and get it. I mean, you can take the steps for yourself to get the property. If you have bought a tax lien in a tax lien state, you got to foreclose on that property. Okay. And if you are in a tax deed state and their right of redemption is over, then you can file for possession. You already own it. Now you just get the right to possess it and get the sheriff in there to kick them out so you can possess it. All right. There's one other type of property tax sale, and that is in Louisiana. For those of you who don't know, I'm stationed in Louisiana twice. I think I've spent the better part of 10 years of my life in Louisiana if you add it all up together. Amazing state, very beautiful, but they are under Napoleonic law, for real, for real. All right. And so what they do is called a tax certificate. You are not buying a lien against the property, and you're not outrightly buying the property unless you get 100% ownership. You are buying a percent ownership in the property. And so a lot of times that doesn't result in 100%. So I learned that the hard way. Woo, yes, I did. Okay. But I still made money on that sale, but I did learn that the hard way. All right. We have students from a lot of different states. So I want to just kind of summarize some of the states that I've been in. There's some states that they do a tax deed that, they wait a long time. And then if you don't pay it, the property belongs to the state. Some places do the liens, some places do the tax certificates. In my look over my shoulder program, I will allow anybody from any state to look over my shoulder. Okay. Because I've done Maryland, I've done tax liens, I've done tax certificates. This will be the first year that I'm actively buying tax deeds. So anybody can look over my shoulder and you can learn from my mistakes and my successes, right? I've been doing tax sales for like 6 or 7 years now. So I'm fairly confident in my ability to execute that and give you a good look over my shoulder lesson. However, this year I will not be taking partners for Texas. I'm not going to be taking partners because the partnership program isn't earn while you learn. The partnership program is you buy into it. So we're basically joint venturing together. We're pooling our money to get, not pooling. Pooling is such an interesting term. You are paying me for the educational right to walk through the process with me. You are taking a class, and the class will be able to have opportunities to learn to earn as they learn. Let's say it that way. All right. Um, Now, if the owner redeems their property, which is usually what happens in a tax sale situation, the investor gets their money back with interest. Okay. Each jurisdiction is different. I've lived in some that are 12% with a 6-month right of redemption, 24% with a 2-year right of redemption, even 30% or 36%. In Louisiana, you get a baseline 5% back plus 1% for each month that you hold the certificate. So yes, I was so excited about this property. I thought I was going to actually get and use as my training center. Y'all, they came to me in the 2-year and 11-month and redeemed their property. So I made 41% interest of that bad boy. And I was like, it was interesting. It was very interesting, but I appreciated the money, but that time I really wanted the property. All right. And the reason it's important to understand this is rate of return matters. Rate of return determines how much you get back how fast. And a lot of times people look at the total dollar amount. Tax liens, tax sales, if they don't result in you acquiring the property, they could be small dollar amount. Sounds like a small dollar amount. But my thing is, if you can make a huge return on a small dollar amount, you can take that return and then rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat. And you ultimately have a return on investment that outpaces the market, outpaces the stock market, outpaces everybody else going into deep debt to buy real estate, and outpaces almost every other business opportunity you can. This is how, if you work it harder than I do, and I know people, I got this title from someone who did this. Him and his buddy started off with $2,500. And when I met him 9 years later, they were investing 2.5 million each year in tax sales. So that means they earned a lot more than that since they were full-time investors. You know what I'm saying? But I just loved that visual of 2,500 to 2.5 million. And that was just what they were investing. Can you just stop and dream for a second? Just think about what it would be like to have $2.5 million that you didn't need to feed your family. that you didn't need to pay your house, that you didn't need to have nice vacations, that $2.5 million that you could sink into the next level of your business. Ah, wouldn't that be a thing? Wouldn't you be able to do so much good in the world with $2.5 million that wasn't even a requirement for your living expenses, for your giving? How much could you get? How many schools could you save? How many foster children could you give a new life to? Oh my goodness, not saying you have to adopt them all, but you can fund programs and people who want to help. Oh, I would that everybody would get on the bandwagon with all these different ways to build wealth. Okay. So, all right. Let me get back to reality here because I get all excited when I dream about what's possible. Okay. If the owner does not redeem, okay, some jurisdictions, your redemption period is longer than a year. So if it's longer than a year, you got to keep paying taxes. Like you got to pay, like that one property. I'm going to tell you, no, actually, that one property I almost got, they paid their own taxes, but there was another one that wasn't paying their taxes. And I just kept paying it year after year after year. And they never redeemed it. And then that's when I discovered I only had 4% interest. And I thought, well, I've only got 4% ownership of this. And it cost more to go to the lawyer and file a partition to get my piece of it. So I'm just going to sit on it. And you know what happened? That gentleman was nearing death. And when his heirs found out that somebody else was a part owner of that property, guess what they did? Oh, y'all, they cut me a check. So anyway, some jurisdictions you keep paying the taxes and you have to calculate that into your research to see if it's worthwhile. In other places, it really depends on whether or not you own the property or you've bought a percentage ownership. Okay. And also whether or not you're willing to file a court action for sale of property. I know real estate, you should always, always, always consider it a business and not get emotional. But I bought a tax sale on somebody, and here's what happened with him. He bought his house close to the tax date. He paid on his HUD, he paid the previous owners for the tax that they should have paid. But because they moved out, they didn't pay the tax. So that tax for that year didn't get paid. He kept paying on his tax because he had now a mortgage that covered it. But however they set it up in the beginning, the mortgage didn't pay the back taxes. So nobody paid the back taxes. He paid for it to the previous owner, but the previous owner didn't take care of it. So there was some kind of weird wonkiness there because he bought the house round about the time that taxes were due. So I go out there, and this is what I do with all of them. I want the money. Most of the time, I don't want the property. I want my money, honey. And so I went out there and I had my little flyers that said, "Pay your bills, go pay your tax, go pay your tax, go get caught up in your tax." And when I saw him, and he was a crippled veteran, but even though he was a crippled veteran, he was repairing his house from hail damage. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't have the heart needed to be transferred. And then I made myself known and I did get paid well for it. But in many other cases, if in that was in Louisiana where I'm a part owner, they can't ignore me if they want to do something with the property. Right. But in other states, like if you're in a tax lien state and you don't file when you get the opportunity to file, you might be at risk. You might be at risk. Okay. So we want to keep those kinds of things in mind. Every jurisdiction is different. And this is something that really confused me when I got started because some jurisdictions wait, let me back up. Everybody pays the full tax. Everybody pays full tax. But what you're bidding on is percentage of ownership. So in Louisiana, the lowest percentage of ownership wins. And in the auction, the first person to get down to 1%, if everybody starts bidding down to 1% ownership, they win. Okay. In some jurisdictions, you are bidding on the lowest interest rate you take back. So maybe the starting interest rate is 24%. And you say, okay, well, I'll take 20% back. And this investor says, I'll take 15% back. And that investor says, I'll take 10% back. And if nobody goes lower than that, then they get it. And, if you're a new investor starting out, well, you might not want to make less on your tax sale than you make on the market. So you might bow out, And some of them you might bid the highest amount you're willing to pay for the property. And you don't have to pay that right away. You do have to pay the full tax, and then they will put a premium. You have to pay a percentage of the difference that you bought and then that you bid. And then in order to actually get the property, you got to pay the rest, but you don't have to pay it all up front. and so there's different ways to do it, and you got to learn what your jurisdiction wants. So, how do you get that $5,000 house, huh? All right, the $5,000 house, $5,000, I think it's like $49.94 or something like that, is the starting price for adjudicated properties on Civic Source. I'm going to cover that super quick, and then I'm going to talk about a little bit more about tax sales. Okay, the tax sale properties, I've gotten tax sale properties for as little as $300 and $400. Okay, and so you have to know your market, you have to know what you're doing, but that $5,000 house for an adjudicated property is different from the tax sale. They advertise it like it's for the tax sale, and then you get in there and you get all confused, because really what the adjudicated property is, I'm not going to play the video. If you're interested in the video, you can go out to Equity Trust their YouTube channel, and they've got all kinds of videos on this. Okay. The adjudicated properties, this is what happens. Somebody doesn't pay their tax in year one. That property goes to the tax sale. Nobody buys it. Year two, property goes to the tax sale. Nobody buys it. Year three, year four, year five. However many years that jurisdiction is, a lot of them that I've lived in, it's been 5 years. If nobody pays the tax, then that parish or county has the right to take the property back. They resell it and what they call return it to commerce. Basically, we taking your property from you and we're giving it to somebody else that's going to pay us. And so those are what's called adjudicated properties. You're actually buying the property that has sat untax paid and not been bought by an investor at the tax sale for a certain number of years. And when you buy those, they're yours. You can buy them through Civic Source for as little as $5,000, or you can go through your local land tax office. Sometimes these properties are like next door to you, and if you check with your office, check with your local county or parish office, because if you've been taking care of it for a year, a lot of times they let you get it for like $1. Okay. Now, the thing about Civic Source, a lot of jurisdictions are moving to Civic Source and companies like it, and they'll often advertise that you can get title insurance. Please, please, please watch out, because that title insurance is not all the way back in the day chain of custody title insurance. That title insurance only covers you up to what you paid for the property. So you have to be really careful about your use case and your exit strategy when you have a $5,000 property. And we're going to talk more about that. I don't have the time today to do so, but we're going to talk more about those use cases and exit strategies in the intensive workshop we're going to do Saturday at 10 Central. It's a 2-hour workshop, and it's only $20.24. All right. The adjudicated process, every jurisdiction has their own method. So you're going to want to go ahead and find out what that is for your jurisdiction. And then you end up with the property. You end up with effectively a tax sale property, although it's not always a tax sale property. Civic Source is interesting. Let me go back to that slide. Do I have that there? Civic Source is interesting because when you initiate buying an adjudicated property, Civic Source actually charges you a pretty hefty fee to start the process. Of what they do is all the research, and they do all the advertising, and then they auction the property off. Now, if you don't win the auction, you get the property back. You get your money back. I'm sorry. You get your money back. But if you do win the auction, that initial fee is applied to what you're going to pay. So just keep that in mind when you're dealing with Civic Source. All right. So now that's the overview of tax sales and the adjudicated properties. Let me go ahead and walk quickly through the process. Okay. The process is really not as hard as it might sound. That's why this is going to be one of my shorter real estate investment 101s. All right. And we will dig into the details more Saturday, but that's not a process discussion. That's an individualized. You bring properties from your neighborhood, your area, your county, and we actually go and do the research. And then I help you have that comfort level that you can do this. Okay. This today is just the process. All right. Okay, so the process simplified. If you are an expert, let me say this, let me make me big so you can see this. If you are an expert, this is tax sales 101. I'm sure in your jurisdiction, there's all these different intricacies. All right. We are putting the cookies on the bottom shelf and making it so that people can understand the process and feel as comfortable about it as I did when I first did my first tax sales. All right. So we're not talking about all these complicated strategies and things. We are making this wealth building tool accessible to everyone. Okay. So that means I'm going to leave out some things that might confuse people because they don't need it to start profiting. Okay. All right. So the list is going to be released by your jurisdiction. Now, where I currently live in Erath, Texas, that's farmed out to a couple different law firms, and so I'm on the mailing list for those different law firms, and I understand how they're doing it. They do a tax sale twice a year, and they do foreclosure sales as well. And so you kind of just figure out how to get the list. When I was in Maryland, and when I was well, let me just finish Maryland. When I was in Maryland, the list was released at the county. You had to go down and pick up the paper list. You had to pay for like $1 or something for the paper list. And then now they're all online. In Louisiana, many of those parishes are online and through Civic Source. Okay, so you find a list, you do your research. Now I'm gonna tell you, do your research. Do your research. I'm going to give you very specific examples during the Saturday workshop of areas where doing my research saved me from making $10,000, $20,000 mistakes. Okay, so you want to do your research. You go ahead and bid, and make sure before you bid, you've done your research. So again, I think I covered this on a different slide. I probably meant to put this one up there, but everybody pays the tax. And then depending on what you bid is going to determine what you are likely to pay. I actually covered that when I covered this slide. So if you're just joining us, go back to YouTube and find where I talked about that slide, and then you will get the whole discussion on it. All right. The thing about it, like I was saying earlier, is it is a waiting game. Every jurisdiction has a different redemption period, and most of the time you are not going to end up with a house. You're going to end up with a nice fat interest check. So you want to take that time to learn how to take title. I mean, now granted, I'm a big fan of you learning how to do that beforehand, but you know what? I'd really rather you take action. And if you don't have time to learn how to take title in states that it's not yours yet, that you get an opportunity to buy it or anything, I'd rather you err on the side of take action, because you got a year or 6 months to figure it out, right? Sometimes we say, "Oh, I got to get everything ready," and don't we say that though? We say, "Oh, I got to get everything ready first before I can move forward." But if you wait to get everything ready, then everybody else has already moved past you. Now I'm not, it'd be different if yeah, never mind. I won't even bring up negative use cases, because I don't want that to set up in your psyche and cause you to miss out on a blessing. My very first tax sale that I did, I messed a whole lot up, and I still have one of those properties left today. No, I'm sorry, not my very first tax sale, my very first tax certificate purchase in Louisiana. The very first one I did, I bought a bunch of properties and all but one redeemed. And the one that didn't redeem, when I went back to ask some questions of the land office, the head honcho, she looked over my portfolio. She's like, "You should have never bought this one. And here's why." I consider that a $700 valuable lesson that has turned into $70,000 over the rest of time. Okay. So yeah, you're going to make a few mistakes here and there, but if you go through my training, you're going to minimize the number of mistakes you make, especially if you do your research. Okay. So I don't want you to avoid taking action just because you're not clear about all the process. I will say that in tax certificate states where you only own a portion of the house, so like 4%, 39%, 10%, you're only a 10% owner, you want to consult a title attorney. If you don't have a title attorney that's going to give you a good discount on filing the paperwork, it may not be worth your while to begin to bid on properties that are less than that, unless you are convinced that they are bread and butter properties in a good neighborhood that they're going to pay you back. Why? Because I found out with that $700 one that it was going to cost me $10,000 for them to partition the property and give me my piece. And then my piece was going to be so small, I couldn't do what I wanted to do with it. So I still have it. But one day they're going to sell it, and then they're going to pay me. It sounds easy, right? It is simple, but like a lot of things in life, it's simple, but it's not easy. And there are gotchas. And I'm going to talk about a few of them real quick. But if you really want to dig into it, please, sir, please, ma'am, get on my tax sales workshop this Saturday, 10 Central. It's only $20.24. I mean, you can't get a better education than that. People in the past have paid me up to $500 for this particular workshop that we're going to do, and you're getting it at only 24. All right. All right. That slide shouldn't be there because I am not covering this bullet here that says before I talk about the pitfalls. That's something I'm covering in the workshop. I'm so sorry. I forgot to delete that for this public broadcast. Okay. That's a big deal. You got to understand your exit strategies, and the exit strategies for a tax sale property are different than the exit strategies for other properties. So you want to make sure you got 2 or 3 real solid exit strategies before you buy. But we're going to actually talk about use cases and which ones apply to which in the workshop, because it's easier to do when we've actually analyzed the property. You got to go through all that analysis first. So I can't do that on a short class like this. So some pitfalls that you're going to want to watch out for. I've already talked about subsequent taxes. There might also be fees. There might be fees that property has incurred, and now you might be responsible for them. You're going to want to watch out for the utilities. You're going to want to watch out for busted pipes. We had a hailstorm that destroyed a bunch of mine, and I thought I was never going to unload those things, that they were never going to redeem them, and then I didn't have the money to repair them. Thankfully, either people died or people sold the property, or a commercial place bought one of them and was gonna tear it all down anyway. And so then I was able to get paid. But I mean, sometimes you just got to walk away, especially if you're in a state where it froze and the pipes bust and it's going to cost more to fix it than the house is actually worth, like my $3,000 house in Baltimore. I'm so thankful. It's lived in, and that the renter takes good care of it. But we have to understand that sometimes life happens, and we have to make sure we make enough smart business decisions to outweigh the times like that where we do have to walk away. Okay, I already talked about not having 100% ownership interest, and what you do on that, and what can be some issues with that. So I'm going to go ahead and close with this slide. I don't see any questions in the chat, and normally I would say if y'all have questions, let me know, but I'm going to say no, I'm not going to today because my son has a concert and I'm about 2 minutes from being late to go to it. So I'm going to ask for your grace. I'm going to ask for a little bit of grace today. And if you're watching this as a replay tonight and you're dropping questions in the chat, I am so sorry that I'm not live to answer your questions. I'll answer them after the concert, okay? But if you know that this is stuff you are interested in, go ahead and sign up for the Tax Sales 101 workshop. You can go to jjclink.com/tax sales, and that way you'll be able to get the nitty gritty. I'm also going to recommend that you open up a self-directed IRA. Equity Trust is the company I use. You don't have to use Equity Trust. I just know they've taken good care of me. All right. And then if you think you might want to earn while you learn, make sure you get with me at that workshop to qualify as a partner. You have to take the workshop to qualify as a partner. And if you are an accredited investor, or if you in other ways that the SEC deems legal qualify as a partner, then I'll collect your deposit and we will go into this together. Okay. That's all I've got for you today in our Tax Sale 101. I know that was fast and furious, but I hope it's been profitable for you. I'm JJ Conway. Thank you so much for watching. You can find me on the web at all social media @JJ Knows the Way. And I hope that I will see you in that tax sales class Saturday. Y'all take care and be blessed.